Welcome everybody to the Bitcoin is Freedom show. Today I have someone very hot in the space, Dennis Porter. I'm gonna let him introduce himself. I just want to tell you guys that basically the Bitcoin is Freedom show is a podcast that I did um, basically because I motivated by my mentor Jim Rohn, and I want to talk about capitalism and Bitcoin in this show, and I get the most influential people in the Bitcoin space to tell us their Bitcoin story. So Dennis, thanks a lot for taking the time. You're really a busy guy right now. I see it. You're everywhere. You're blowing up. You're really a hot guy right now in the space, and I like that because that's like, first of all, congrats, and I'm really thankful for you for your time.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me on. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I've been very fortunate to have the success that I've had, but you know how it comes down to just hard work, determination, and never quitting, never giving up. So I always encourage everybody else out there, whatever space, whatever industry it is that you're in, wherever you want to be, do your best. Just, start writing, start reading, start engaging, start doing a podcast, and good things will only come your way. In my opinion, there's no such thing as a bad experience. Every good thing or every bad thing that's ever happened to me in my life has always ended up, being a positive. There's always a lesson to be learned. So yeah, a little bit about me. Let's see. Depends on how far back you want to go. We're talking about Bitcoin in particular today. So I'll focus in on that. I got into Bitcoin in 2017. I was really, really excited about the idea of this money that was outside the government. I, was getting involved in politics for a while, and I saw the problem with money in the world and the money in politics in particular. And I really got excited about guys like Andreas Antonopoulos talking about Bitcoin. He was definitely the one that blew my mind right away when it came to Bitcoin and understanding its potential, not just to get rich, right? Like, obviously we all want to get rich. We all want to make money. We all want to be able to grow our wealth. But the biggest thing about Bitcoin is the freedom aspect and its ability to help unlock all these different communities from all over the world and give them this new tool to be able to build off of. So 2017, got involved with Bitcoin, started reading about Bitcoin. I got, I have this book over here from Andreas Mastering Bitcoin, and I've read it so many times it's practically falling apart, even though it was like a foreign language to me. So read that book till it died, digested every single piece of, podcast content that I could possibly get my hands on, and eventually started to get into mining, got big into mining, really enjoyed doing that, built out my own system in the bottom of my basement, was running like 20 ASICs down there, to the point where eventually my partner was like, you're going insane, because she hadn't been orange pilled yet, right? She's like, you're going insane. you buy one more of these miners and we're done. So I decided to, it was a good relationship. We'd been together for a while. So I figured, well, I got to keep the for sure thing in my life. And Bitcoin's pretty new and I didn't know enough about it at that point. So decided to kind of just continue on with the mining that I had. After some time went on, that big bear market hit in like 2018, 2019. The moments of despair set in, right? And I got a little distracted by various other things in life. Kept studying, kept learning, kept reading about Bitcoin, but got really focused on politics in particular. Started, got trained to be a campaign manager, got trained to do political operations, helped a bunch of different campaigns around the country, and had a really great time helping 4 candidates win their primaries. I'm four for 4, right? So that's pretty good record in politics. After some time went on, we got into 2019 and then 2020, as you know, the infamous market crash, and also with everything that's been going on since then. Like it feels like we haven't left, March 2020. We're still stuck in that moment to some degree, right? But I really became way more focused on Bitcoin again. I jumped onto Clubhouse. I started to talk to people about Bitcoin for the very first time. Got really good at talking about Bitcoin to people, launched my podcast, and have had a lot of success since launching. Used to do like live interviews on Clubhouse. Live interviews were a really fun part of my show, but eventually I moved over to doing just like regular recorded ones like we are today, and then moved into Twitter Spaces. I've been highly engaged with working in politics to help ensure Bitcoin is protected in the USA. So that's like my next big move. As soon as I started talking about Bitcoin, I thought I'd just be a podcaster. I thought, okay, I'm just going to wake up every day. I'm going to find people to interview and I'm going to interview them. And that's going to be my show. What ended up happening though was I started to get really jealous of all of these people out there who were moving to El Salvador, they're moving to Miami, they're moving to Austin to go be where the Bitcoin capital is at, right? Like these hubs that were occurring for Bitcoin. So I started to I started to imagine myself moving to one of these cities. And same thing, who woke up one day and realized, this is not going to be something that I can do. This is not a reality. It's kind of a fantasy. Well, instead of complaining and being, kind of disappointed that my city can't be pro Bitcoin, I decided, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to start working actively to make sure that my city, state, and country is a part of the future instead of the past. So I've been doing all sorts of stuff in the political world in Bitcoin in the USA to make sure that Bitcoin is protected here locally. I'm supporting candidates that are pro Bitcoin, trying to take out candidates that are anti Bitcoin. It's been a really fun ride along the way. And
What's the city?
yeah, what's
Which
that?
city? Which
Portland,
city?
Portland, Oregon, man. We're gonna turn it orange.
Let him know. Let him know.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one.
All right, all right.
So
Oregon, it's like, okay, cool. It's like close to California, like Midwest,
yep.
right?
Yeah, so West Coast, north of California, and Portland, Oregon is probably one of the bluest cities I would say probably the entire country. So
Wow.
it's very different here from most places. We're at the heart of Antifa over here. We're at the heart of a lot of the riots. But I really see a very positive future for Portland. There's been a lot of things economically that have happened in a lot of different homes all across the country, right? But I see Bitcoin as this tool to kind of help rebuild our country, rebuild this city. And so it's kind of my hope and my dream and my goal to make sure that not just America, right, is pro Bitcoin. I want Portland to be pro Bitcoin. I want Oregon to be pro Bitcoin. So I'm working on some things to help make sure that happens.
Love it. All right. I love that. So that's a very contracted story, but I want to hear like the long form. So let's first of all, like let's tell people, because I want to get into a little bit like of your background a little bit, but let's tell people right now, because I didn't do a good job at it. It's been a busy day, like I said, but let's tell people what you're doing right now in this place. You have your main brand. It's Smart People Shit.
Yes. Yep.
It's a very good podcast on YouTube and everywhere that people can find it, obviously on podcasts. I think you own the domain as well. I saw. That's pretty great. That's cool.
Yep, got that.
That's smart. And what else? I see you're working right now with Bitcoin Magazine. You're doing a lot of. By the way, Bitcoin. I don't want to get everywhere, but did you saw that Bitcoin Magazine YouTube channel got shut down an hour ago?
Oh no, I didn't see that. I'm not surprised though that the censorship that's going on YouTube on a regular basis is out of control. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of interesting things recently. I think that the work being done on the political spectrum is very much a big part of what I'm doing. I just really don't want to see the United States end up like China. I think, what was it, about 7 months ago is when they kicked all of the miners out of China, and that caused a global shift with Bitcoin. Two things happened there. One, I think a lot of people got to see and understand the resiliency of the Bitcoin network, despite 60 to 70% of the miners and the hash rate having to be shut down and moved across the globe. Bitcoin continued working and functioning flawlessly. But we also got to see where all of those miners went. And a lot of them, a good chunk of them, came to the United States. And now, for the first time ever, the United States is the #1 in Bitcoin mining. So I really think that it's important that we make sure we keep that here, right? Like we could very well say, wake up tomorrow and go, well, this stuff uses too much energy. Let's go ahead and kick it out because, we don't want to be using and burning so much energy for something that's a waste. So the first goal of mine is to make sure that they understand that Bitcoin is not a waste, and that the energy consumed is going towards a good cause, going towards a good purpose of defending the network, right? But I think that it's going to be a difficult hill to climb. And so with these politicians, right? Because education around Bitcoin, it could take some time, and you have to be receptive to it. So I work furiously to make sure that politicians are incentivized to be pro Bitcoin. And that can be either by, writing letters, emails, contributing, helping candidates unseat anti-crypto, anti-Bitcoin members of Congress. We also have the potential for PACs, super PACs that are organizing around the country. I may start a super PAC. I don't know at this point. It's all Wild West out here, right? So the premise would be, though, that we got to get all this stuff in place, all the infrastructure in place for a political group or political organization to be able to put pressure on politicians to make sure that they know that we are a voter bloc and that we will vote you out of office. We will get you out of office if you try to get in the way of Bitcoin. So a lot of this really started. I don't know if your listeners are aware of the crypto tax reporting amendment. That was an amendment that was put inside the infrastructure bill, which passed last year. And because of that bill, because of that amendment inside of that bill, a lot of people got very upset in the Bitcoin and crypto community. And they decided to start fighting back and making sure that things like this don't happen. The gist of the amendment is that it overregulates the crypto space to the extent that it gives the government the ability to relabel large swaths of the industry as brokers. And the reason why that definition is bad, or we don't want it, it's unhealthy, is it essentially says, because you're a broker, now you have to report KYC, AML, which is know your customer, anti-money laundering laws, and information to the government. And the problem with that is it starts with the fact that because Bitcoin doesn't require you giving up your personal information to use the network, there's no way for the miners, the node operators, the wallet providers, the software developers to collect and deliver that information to the government. So it would be impossible to comply to the law, which would give the government just power to pick winners and losers, or shut the whole thing down and say, this stuff isn't legal in the United States anymore. You got to go somewhere else. Well, a lot of people woke up and said, that's not right. And we pushed back and we didn't win, but the fight just started there. It didn't stop there. And a lot of us have become super active. There's now, because of the efforts of many Bitcoiners, pro-crypto people, we see a bipartisan effort, which is Republicans and Democrats working together to form a bill called the Keep Innovation in America Act, which would help to right the wrong that was in that attack on Bitcoin inside the infrastructure bill. We also see senators like Lummis, who are working to defend Bitcoin by creating a bill in the Senate to help defend Bitcoin. So I'm very excited about that one. There's a lot of stuff going on, man. And maybe I'll pause there and see if you have any questions, or I can kind of keep continuing with a lot of the things that are going on here in the USA.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. Like I was getting pumped. I wanted to clap. I was like, thanks a lot for what you done and everybody else. That's great, man. That's great.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's been fun. I've been really enjoying it. It's funny because I used to hate politics, even though I was working in it. It pissed me off, right? But being a single issue voter, it's this term that we kind of have started using in the space. We're solely focused on Bitcoin, and I am a single issue voter, and I will unseat you if you're anti-Bitcoin, and I will help promote you if you're pro-Bitcoin. I will do whatever I can to defend Bitcoin in the USA. I'm not in a political party. I'm just out here in my single issue voter block working to defend Bitcoin in the USA. But a lot of us, we're having a great time. We're having a really fun time pushing this issue to make sure that the USA is a part of the future. Like, what do you want? Do you want the United States to be a part of the past and to watch all these other countries take Bitcoin and run with it, like El Salvador, and we're just like sitting over here in the corner like, oh, I guess we're just going to wait like 10 years and then maybe we'll finally adopt Bitcoin. No. I have to stay here. I have to live here. I don't know how long you plan on staying in your home country, right? We all have probably thought about moving here and there a little bit over time, but I have roots here. I have 2 businesses. I have a family. I have my house. I'm really, really, really dug deep roots here in this city. We own the home we're in, right? We can't just get up and leave. I could, right, with my Bitcoin, but I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that the home country that I live in is a part of that future. And so that's why I get up every day and I fight to make sure that we are a part of that future by enacting pro-Bitcoin legislation, removing those bad politicians, and making the industry feel welcome here, right? Because we all know in like most countries, but specifically in the USA, the money controls everything, right? It's all, the powers are in the money. So if we have a lot of industry here, we have a lot of business here that's focused on Bitcoin, they're going to work to defend Bitcoin, right? Like that's the way it is. They're going to politically work to make sure Bitcoin is defended in the USA because they stay here. Their roots are here too. the miners don't want to move across the planet, right? That's a big expense. They want to stay in the USA now that they're here. And so we want to make sure that they stay here too. So it's great to be seeing all this work, not only from political, you could call me an activist for Bitcoin, but also from industry members who are now fighting back and making sure we can keep our country, continuing to innovate and thrive for the future.
That's the American spirit right there. That's that I can tell you. I'm from Canada. It's not. We don't have people like thinking like, hey, like we need to take our country, or like we need to do this. This is our country, and like we don't think like that. Yeah, that's insane.
It's a unique thing here, but I love it. It's been hard to be proud of the USA for some time now. I think there's a lot of things that a lot of people don't like with where the United States has been headed. But I personally have never been more proud to be in this country, and never been more proud to be an Oregonian, as we've seen my senator. So you're in Canada, you guys have a different political system. So in the United States, we have Congress, right? And we have the president. So Congress is two branches. You've got the Senate and the House. Each state has two senators, and then depending on the population size of the state, that's how many representatives they have in the House. So we've been fortunate. We have two senators, right? Each state. One of our senators has been very pro Bitcoin and has been helping to fight to protect Bitcoin in Congress. So it's like, wow, for the first time ever, I'm super excited and very proud of my state and my representatives, because typically it's tough to feel proud of the people that are leading your country, because we haven't been necessarily heading in the greatest of directions. So it's been a very positive sign, and I'm really optimistic about the future of America. As long as we protect Bitcoin, we have to protect Bitcoin. In and of itself, Bitcoin is very American. It's full of protecting individual rights, protecting freedom, and then also protecting the minority. Like that's what this country was built on, was protecting the minority, right? That's why we have a decentralized government and a republic. The republic was built to defend the minority of states. And I think that there's a real opportunity for Bitcoin to kind of almost like weave its way through the disenfranchised bodies of government in our country and be pro Bitcoin. And I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. Everyone was surprised what happened with El Salvador. And I think we can shock the world with United States being pro Bitcoin as well.
Oh, wow. I love that. I love that. So what, like, I see, like, obviously, like, politics, and it's your thing. Like, what did you did in the past? Like, are you coming from that background, or what made you being into that?
So I grew up from a very young age with my father listening to talk radio, listening to political talking heads and figures discuss, what's wrong with the country. And so I've always just kind of had a constant conversation with my dad and with other members of my family about politics from a very young age. Eventually, after some time went on, I decided to get into politics. I think most people, there's two ways they get into politics. Either it's a career, you find it interesting as a level of work, or you feel impassioned as someone to run for office, or politics comes for you and you feel like you have to defend yourself. So I've had both of those now. So the first one, I decided to get into politics as a career. I thought, I could make a career out of this. I could be a campaign manager. I could be an operative. I could help get people elected. And that's what I did. I went and studied and was trained as a campaign manager, as someone who can help run a political campaign to help get someone elected and put them into office. I did that for some time. I had a great time. I learned a lot. It was a great experience. And I left more or less because of the shutdowns, right? Because it was very difficult to run campaigns or to get new candidates into office when they weren't even allowed to knock on doors, right? Like you got to go like visit your constituents if you want to win. And so I took a temporary break from it, but then started to jump back in for that second reason, which is politics comes for you. And when I say that, let me explain what I mean.
Yep.
You don't have to be interested in politics, but politics will always be interested in you. And there may be times when it's more or less interested in you, but eventually there will come a time when you're faced with the decision of whether you're going to fight back against the political system, right? So in Oregon, for instance, where I live, we have a timber industry, and the political establishment here has been attacking the timber industry for a long time, trying to tear it apart, saying it's bad for the environment to cut down trees. Eventually, they said, screw you, and they fought back, and they decided to push back against politics. That's what I mean when politics will come for you. Eventually, they're going to see something that you're doing the government doesn't like, and they're going to come for you. And that's what happened with Bitcoin. So in the middle of last year, the crypto tax reporting amendment was an attack on Bitcoin, right? And then also just before that, I kind of became a little active because there was a member of Congress, his name is Brad Sherman, and he's in California's 30th district, and he is running as an anti-Bitcoin member of Congress. And I was like, you know what? Screw this guy. Let's go take him out. That him attacking Bitcoin, but also that bill attacking Bitcoin combined, that's when politics came for me, right? Because I'm a Bitcoiner. And so I had to say, I'm going to stand up and defend myself. So now I've had this opportunity to see both ends of the spectrum. And that's also why for some time now, I've been pushing this idea of Bitcoiners as a single issue voter bloc, because they're galvanizing us by attacking us. They are incentivizing us to fight back by pushing on us. And now we are a group. Now we have unified as a political group and are willing to go to Congress. We're willing to write letters, write emails. I'm willing to donate, contribute to candidates we like or against candidates we don't like. We're willing to run for office. I've had multiple Bitcoiners tell me I'm thinking about running for office. I'm thinking about making a real stance. And that's what happens when you attack single issue voters. They get together and then they attack back. And so I'm really looking forward to kind of continuing to fight back. And I think that they made a big mistake by attacking us. And I think you'll see some members of Congress change their position as time goes on because they feel the pressure from us as a group. But also, you're going to see some members of Congress lose their job because they decided to push back against Bitcoin. I'm hoping we can get Brad Sherman out, kick him out of office, and replace him with Erica Rhodes come November 2022.
Let's go. Let's go. I love that. All right. So you said in 2017, you discovered Bitcoin. I discovered Bitcoin in 2017 as well. I don't know if the same thing happened to you. I'm gonna tell people and you real quick what happened to me. Then I want to know how you discover it. But me, basically, I was not in the situation that I was when I rediscovered it in 2020. So you will understand that. But I was not really like financially free. I was just making enough money to pay my bills and all that. So when I discovered Bitcoin, it was 2019, the hype and everything. And I basically discovered BitConnect. I don't know if you remember that. So that pretty much tell you what happened with me in 2017 and my $4,000. So that was it. And I've been studying, like not in school and all that, but I like the Italian history, and I study like the Medici and the banks where it started and all that. And I'm not a fan of the bank, really not, but I was like, they are never gonna let like the system that they built for hundreds of years just being taken over by this little thing called Bitcoin. So I said like, I'll just fuck that. And I kept on doing my thing. But in 2020, for you, that was Antonopolis. For me, that was Sailor. Like when Sailor started making videos in September 2020, well, I discovered it in September 2020. I just bought my house in September 2020. And then I was like asking myself, like I always tell people, it's like the best question you can ask in the world. What should I do with that money? I started making more money than I needed for my bills, and I bought a house. I was like this is where I discovered Rolexes. And I bought this one, my first one, and I bought another one later on. But in between that, I discovered Bitcoin, and I was like, okay, this is what I should do with my money. And then I started getting interested and listening to Sailor, like the melting ice cube and all that. And that was it for me. I became a Bitcoiner like right there. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, congrats on becoming a Bitcoiner. I always love to hear people's stories. You know, you brought up Sailor. I thought that was an interesting one because although Andreas Antonopoulos, who was a very eloquent speaker, got me into Bitcoin with the way he spoke about it, it was Sailor and his boldness to be so outspoken despite, you know, having so much credibility on the line that it really encouraged me to decide to start being a public facing, public speaking Bitcoiner. Because back when I got into Bitcoin, nobody wanted to be public. We didn't want anybody to
Yep.
know we had Bitcoin. We want to be super private, not talk about it, be very careful. I did that for some time, but I always wanted to speak more about Bitcoin, wanted to talk more about it. But I did my time, I did my 4 years, and once I saw Sailor come out and start to speak, it really started to give me FOMO around becoming a public Bitcoiner because I realized once Sailor, now that he's doing this, there's going to be a lot more people that are going to jump out and say, I want to publicly speak about Bitcoin now too, because I want to not only what? Well, you got two things going on here. They want to feel like they're not missing out on just this opportunity to speak about Bitcoin, but also as time goes on, like if you wait another 4 years, like you probably won't get as much like respect or ROI, return on investment, for becoming a public Bitcoiner, right? Like
Mhm.
in 10 years, no one will care that you're a public Bitcoiner. There's going to be unlimited amounts of public Bitcoiners, right?
Yeah.
So I started to realize like, wow, there's an opportunity here to get on the ground floor still of talking about Bitcoin, and I can't miss it. I can't wait another cycle because I was considering to wait another cycle and I couldn't do it. So I jumped out, and it was purely because of Sailor. So it's interesting that he's the one that, you know, orange pilled you. I mean, he's the one that got me excited to talk about Bitcoin. I think the impact of Sailor cannot be understated. I think he is arguably next to Andreas Antonopoulos had the largest impact on the most amount of people in a way that made them like, I'm a Bitcoiner now. Like I'm
Yeah.
full on Bitcoin. So that's
Yeah.
cool. And yeah, I love the watch. I love watches as well. So congrats on being able to be in a position to snag one of those guys.
Yes. Thanks. Yeah. So thanks for you too. Thanks to you too as well, man. That's super great. Um, might as well talk about that a little bit. So you told me the one that you had on. Like, what are the other one that you got? Like the do you have like a big collection, or do you have other one?
You know, I started collecting watches recently. I like the idea of collecting, and I'm not. I've only started to get into the, you know, luxury side of watches recently. The one thing that I do like to collect. I was kind of talking to you about it before the show. Is like I do my whiskey collection stuff, but we should probably be selling all of it and buying more Bitcoin at this point with the way the price is going down. It's a great price to buy at.
Yeah, well, me, what I say is it's like this is basically 6 months of mortgage or 3 months of living or 2 months of living if I ever need it. If I ever, but that would broke my heart because
Yeah.
that's just I love it. I just love it, man.
It's like people don't know this, but a lot of really high quality, highly sought after watches like the one that you're wearing hold value. They actually store
Oh,
value. Like I think a lot of people see some of these luxury goods and they just see it as like opulence and like it's a waste of money.
that's
And
what I thought.
but in fact, a lot of the watches, these whiskeys behind me, some of the nice car, not all of them, right? You could buy a $20,000 watch and it would lose a lot of its value quickly because it's not the right watch, right? There are certain watches, particularly things like Rolex Submariners, that hold their value because they have a lot of demand and they're scarce. Like I encourage you, if you're watching this show, go to a Rolex store right now and try to buy a Rolex Submariner, and they will laugh at you because you cannot buy them. It's a very interesting system that they have set up that drives scarcity and demand, but you basically have to know someone who has access, or you have to have way too much money and like almost like bribe your way in. So it's a very interesting
Exactly.
system, and but what ends up happening is the watches themselves hold value extremely well, and they even go up in value. Like there's a watch that
Mhm.
I had, which they discontinued the creation of it, and it has since I think like tripled in value since its creation. I mean, I think the watch actually outperformed Bitcoin at one point this year. Like
Wow.
it's pretty
Which
funny.
one? Like the Daytona or what? Or which?
Oh, there's a couple different watches out there, but there is a one watch that's called the Hulk that as a
Okay, yeah.
that was discontinued by Rolex, and it's gone up in value quite significantly. So it's an interesting game out there. It's interesting to see the way this stuff works, and I think once that's why you also kind of see like a lot of new wealthy Bitcoiners like they aren't buying this stuff because they think it's a waste of money. Like maybe you're right. It's definitely not as valuable as Bitcoin in my opinion. Bitcoin will probably outperform it in the long term, but and you'll probably be able to buy 50 watches if you hold your Bitcoin long enough. But some of this stuff does hold value really well, and I'm attracted to that level of scarcity, store value aspect that some watches and some cars and some whiskeys have. Not all of them have it, right? You can't even just go buy any Lambo. You got to buy the right Lambo, right? Like it's like a whole system.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. And like on my watch, I think like yours took way more, but like mine took maybe 20-25% in 1 year. So it's definitely beating inflation. Not that bad. Well, a little bit beating inflation, a little bit actually. But yeah, no, I love that. And yeah, to finish on that, like I went to the store talking about what you were saying. We got 3 Rolex store over here in Montreal. And just before Christmas, I talked with them. Obviously, like the next one I want is a 𝐉𝐸𝐽𝐧. I don't know. I really like the thing around and the anyway. I was like, oh, this one is not that crazy. It's not a Daytona. It's not a Submariner. Maybe I have a big Instagram, or I had a big Instagram following. I got shut down 3 days ago. But I said maybe I can negotiate something. Like I got on the list. Obviously, I didn't get nothing, but I talked with the guy, and he saw the watch that I had there, and I said, just for fun, like how much I have to spend, to get the watch, because I talked with him. He understand that I understand how it was working, and said, well, basically we're talking about the 𝐉𝐸𝐽𝐧, maybe 50-75K. But if you want like the one you got on your wrist or some Mariner, whatever, 100K, 200K. If you want a Daytona, $250,000, and that is in 1 year.
It's pretty wild.
Just
very,
to
very
be
wild.
able to buy it. They don't give it to you guys, by the way. You just for you to buy it. They don't give it as a gift.
Did you get you got your Instagram censored? What happened over there?
I really don't know, to be honest. I literally like on December 24, I was maybe a little mini burnout. I stopped going in my stories, replying to my DM and posting. I was posting a little bit political stuff before that sometime, but since December 24th, that was only my support posting, nothing political, no stories from me, nothing. And out of nowhere, Instagram account shut down. And it was, anyway, we don't really need to get into it, but I don't know why. So
well, make sure you push back and fight back against them, because that's what happens if they shut you down. If you don't push back, then they might not ever give it back to you.
Yeah, well, I to be honest, like, and I don't care talking about it, but yeah, I try pushing back. I even have, like, to be honest, I spend about $500,000 Canadian dollar on Facebook ad, because I've been basically living on Instagram and being an Instagrammer since 2017, and all my business run on Instagram. And I had 0 Instagram account from 2015. I was on it to 2020, and then when everything started in 2020 with the Trump election and the virus and all that, well, we started getting shut down. My account that got shut down, it's the 3rd time that it got shut down. I pay someone to get it back $3,000. I got it back another time randomly. So maybe I will get it back randomly in the future. But besides that account, I got 12 other Instagram accounts that got shut down. 12. They don't stop. They don't stop. We don't know why. We don't know if it's our competition reporting us. Maybe it has nothing to do with the cancel culture, but I think it has to do with the cancel culture. But we see now, Pump YouTube channel got shut down like 2 months ago, and then he went on Twitter, got it back. Now it's Bitcoin Magazine. Like, no joke, 1 hour ago, I was watching the live stream. I was on the live stream. All of a sudden, it's like, this video is not available. And I was talking shit a little bit in the comments. I was like, oh no, I hope they didn't block me. So I went incognito, all that. no, the channel is deleted. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate. That is a big problem now in the world that we face, is this ability for these large social media tech platforms to shut down people and do it just kind of at will, and with real no system for reporting. I think it's become very unfair. I hope that there's a way to fix it. I hope there's a way to get around it. I obviously there's a demand for alternatives ways to engage on social media, as you've seen with this new Getter app that's out now, where the right has feel like they had to create their own Twitter. I don't know if you saw it launch, but Getter is like a new
No?
Twitter platform that is kind of focused on free speech. I don't know. I don't know how much of it's focused on free speech. I think it's more just to make sure that people on the right aren't censored by Twitter. As you've seen, we've seen President Trump and we've seen members of Congress have their accounts removed from Twitter. And regardless of your political leanings or what you believe about, politics, and whether you agree with Trump or you disagree with him, I just don't think it's right to be putting so much power in the hands of a social media platform to censor and have the ability to censor, the president of the United States.
That was insane. But yeah, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God. Like, yeah. But we almost knew they were working on that. There was even some video. I thought, anyway, we're getting a little bit political, and I don't mind. I really don't mind. I don't mind. Like, at this point, my Instagram account is shut down. My YouTube channel is not that big. I
Take
don't
the
really
gloves
care.
off.
I
Take
don't.
the gloves
Yeah,
off.
I don't care. And I've always been like that. If you look at videos, and that's why I find it funny on my Instagram, because if they wanted to shut me down for like political stuff in the past, since September 1st, because me, where I'm from, since September 1st, if you're unvaccinated, that's what they call you. Basically, you cannot go to restaurant, cannot go to public place, anything, nothing. Cannot go play poker, nothing, zero. And when that happened, I said, okay, fuck it. I'm starting to talk shit again. I'm starting to talk against that, and I don't care what is happening. Like, my honor at this point is more important than my little social media account. I'll get another one.
Paul, hey, that thing I said earlier, politics came for you, man.
Yeah.
Like, that's a thing. So now you're
Fuck
you're
yeah.
you're getting in because the government came for you, and that's ultimately what happens when the government comes for you. When politics comes for you, you have to fight back, or otherwise they're just gonna keep pushing.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, before they shut down the Instagram, I was like, maybe I should do a second podcast. Like, I always get the term right, so people don't laugh at me if I get it wrong. Libertarian podcast.
You got it.
I wanted to talk with people like 𝐉𝐸𝐧 𝐓𝐡𝐞 and people like that. Like, man, like, I want to get those people on. I want to talk about that, but I don't want to do it on this podcast because some people don't want to talk about it, and I respect that, so I don't want to mix it. But yeah.
But that's also why Bitcoin is so important, because it gives you the ability to speak freely. Like, the ultimate level of gatekeeping in the world is the ability to freely spend money. How long are you going to stand up to the government when you can't eat? How long are you going to stand up to the government when you can't pay your rent, or when you can't, help make sure your kids go to school, pay for your kids' college? How long are you going to stand up when you can't pay for anything, right? You're starved to death. You won't even be able to pay for your water bill. You'll die within a matter of weeks if the government shuts off your ability to use money. And because of this digital era we live in, the government has more control and more power over your financial well-being than ever before. And so that's why, like, to some extent, like, Bitcoin is very political, because it gives you this ability to fight back against an overly powerful government that wants to do you harm. Now you have the ability to save, to spend, to transact, without the government getting in the way, because it's permissionless. So that's a big part of why Bitcoin is so important. That's one of the biggest reasons why I was so attracted to it in the first place. It truly is financial freedom. It's anti-tyranny money, right? It's anti-corruption money.
Yes, sir. The slogan of this podcast is Bitcoin is freedom, Bitcoin is hope, and Bitcoin fix the world. So it's really that. For me, it's way more than for the game. Way more than that. It's really about changing the world and all that. And I see they're really focused on USA, but I see, it's going to help everywhere. But it's great that you focus on first your place, build it crazy, and then all of these big business are going to take over the world, like you always done in the USA. So it's
It's like you got to put the what do they say when you're in the
Yep.
airplane? You got to put the mask on first
Yep.
before you move to help others. I think
Yep.
Saylor talks about that, in one of his talk conversations with Tucker Carlson. He talks about putting the mask on before you go to help other people. If there's a oxygen mask over here, right, and the oxygen is being sucked out of the room, which is what it's happening. That's what they're doing with the money. They're sucking the oxygen out of the room. You won't have very long until your blood oxygen levels drops to a point where you will die. And so it's important, if you want to survive economically, that you put on the oxygen mask and that you make sure that you have the opportunity not only to protect yourself and to keep yourself healthy and alive, but also now you can go around and help put the gas mask on, or the oxygen mask on, other people as well.
Yes. Yes. All right. So, yeah. So, when we didn't get into it basically, but maybe you want to get back into like when you discover Bitcoin, like, because it's intriguing. I don't know for you, but I like it's often the same story kind of, but it's really intriguing. Like, what basically like made you really take on it, like discover and say, oh shit, like I want to watch everything about that. I don't know if you've been like that, but pretty much every Bitcoiner I hear of, they're like, okay, when I discovered Bitcoin, I just started watching every single podcast, every book, every audio book, everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like 2017, I discovered Bitcoin after a friend had mentioned that there was this money that could be anonymous on the internet. And I thought, that's crazy. There's no way that's possible. So I went to go research it. Quickly found out that that's not true. It's not totally anonymous, but definitely there is some privacy aspects to Bitcoin that are important, and I think will improve over time. But just became very intrigued by the design. I was very fortunate to find guys like Andreas Antonopoulos very quickly. Got to listen to him, got to read his book, and yeah, I just spent the majority of my time on Twitter, on Reddit, mostly Reddit at the time, like reading the forums and reading the posts that people were putting up about Bitcoin, and became obsessed with it and just couldn't stop digesting content. In fact, there was not enough content back in the day. I used to go days sometimes where there was no new podcast episodes or no new writings. Now it's like there's an unlimited amount of podcasts, TikTokers, and influencers writing and talking about Bitcoin, and there's a flood of education around it. So it's much easier to get orange pilled as a Bitcoiner now today than ever before. Back then, you kind of had to hunt it down a little bit, right? I always wondered how the guys back in 2013 or 2011 ever figured out how this thing had value, because there was almost no education around it whatsoever, and it was very difficult to use back then as well.
Yes. Yes. Well, yeah, I never been on these things, but like forums and the like kind of Reddit and all that. I guess this is where it started, but I never been on, this is like old school internet.
Yep. Well, before that, it was on Bitcoin Talk Forum.
Yeah.
But they moved to Reddit, and then there was some issues with Reddit, and now everybody's over on Twitter. And that's kind of where the majority of the conversation has taken place for some time now. We've seen it move on to YouTube and podcast platforms quite a bit as well, as since the very beginning that's been popular. But also, I think you're seeing some of that kind of pull back towards Twitter with the advent of Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse, as an app. But Twitter Spaces has been incredible. I use it very commonly for great conversations. We just had one with Andrew Yang, Erica Rhodes, was it Jake Chervinsky was in there, and we had Isaiah Jackson as well. He wrote the book Black Bitcoin Billionaire, and there's a couple other folks that would join that conversation. It was a great talk. Now I'm planning to use it to have another conversation around mining. So I'm hoping to get some of the big mining CEOs and industry players together in a conversation to be able to connect with policymakers. So the point would be to invite lawmakers and industry folks into the room, let them have a conversation around how we can make sure that good policy is written that will encourage mining and that will help to flourish that industry versus, attacking it, or, because even still, like, I think some politicians, I don't always like to assume that they have you know, devious motives. Like maybe they're just misguided, right? Like they don't really understand the technology. And so they write something in a way where they think this is the right direction. But that's why it's so important to get these miners into a spaces with the policymakers so they can have a conversation and figure out how do you write good policy? How do you get good laws that will help promote Bitcoin and mining in the USA? So the Twitter Spaces has been awesome. Like social media has been incredible for spreading Bitcoin. I don't even know if you could like legitimately spread the word of Bitcoin without social media. I don't think it would take hundreds of years, right?
Yeah, it
And
wouldn't
it would be
work. It
too
wouldn't have
slow.
the network effect. It
Yeah,
would, yeah.
exactly. Well, I mean, it took gold hundreds of years for gold to take over as a common form of money, and you know it lasted for 5,000 years. I think you're going to see something similar with Bitcoin, except it's going to be much faster. We're going to adopt it much quicker because of the advent of the internet, technology, and communications and education that is available on the internet for anyone today. But also because of the fact that it's much more valuable than gold itself. It has better properties than gold. So once it's established and once it's won, I think to some extent it has already won. But once it's fully embedded in our society, I could see Bitcoin easily lasting as the common money store of value for much longer than gold was. I mean, gold was around for 4 or 5,000 years. I think Bitcoin could last at least double that amount of time.
Damn. That's a long time. That's crazy. I love
Human
that.
human beings have been waiting a long time for uh, what is essentially close to perfect money, right? We've been using money for 10,000 years. And for 10,000 years, governments and people in power all over the world have been using their influence and power to debase and corrupt the money that we use. That's had lots of negative impacts on society in the world. It's had incredibly devastating impacts on various societies and cultures. So many societies and cultures have collapsed because of this. Like if you read 𝐉𝐸𝐷 A
Oh,
Bitcoin Standard, incredible book. Make sure you guys pick it up if you're listening to this.
it's
It
great.
talks about glass agri beads and how the glass agri beads were used by African civilizations in order to be a form of money, in order to be a store of value, because they during that time in the 1700s, 1600s, the glassmaking ability by the African nations was not as advanced as other parts of the world. So they were using it as a money because it was more scarce, it was harder to make, and but it was also readily available. Unfortunately, when the Europeans came south, they noticed that the Africans were using these glass beads as a form of money, which is bad because they had advanced glass making abilities up north in European nations. And so they basically started to super, like, you print or create tons of these beads and then flood the African nations with those beads. And they, you know, like pillaged those countries without even having to fight a war, right? Like they just
Mhm.
pillaged them by debasing that currency. And that had two really, really bad impacts on that society. One is the Europeans were able to extract a lot of the resources that the African nations had collected, not just resources. They were able to flood the system with so much money that these African leaders were unaware and were willing to, say, "Wow, this is so much money. I'm gonna start selling members of my own community off because this is such an incredible amount of money." All the while, which is an horribly atrocious thing, but corrupt money can corrupt societies and can corrupt the way we think to a very extreme level, and that's why it's so dangerous. Because what ended up happening was, the transatlantic slave trade took off and had such a bad impact on those African nations in the sense that it pulled all of those human beings away from their home, and then supplanted them in another country. That's why the transatlantic slave trade was so bad. Why it got so out of control. Part of the reason, right? There are other reasons, but there's that example of money being debased and used to corrupt society. You also have the example a little closer to our time in history, which is when the Weimar Republic hyperinflated its currencies,
Mm.
hyperinflated its currency, the mark. And when they did that, the people were very upset and very angry. And Hitler pointed a finger at the Jews, and that's part of what led to the Holocaust, and is also what led to World War II. So hundreds of millions or tens of millions of people, and a very specific group of people were oppressed and killed in mass numbers because of that event that occurred. So if that event had not occurred, I don't know if World War II would have happened, and I don't know if the Holocaust would have happened. So you really quickly you can see that very, very, very bad, horrible things happen when we play around with money and when we mess around with it. When you collapse a currency, you can see things as bad as genocidal murder occur at mass rates. So we're headed in that direction as a country and as a world. We're printing our money to those levels, if not further, and we're really kind of like sitting over a cliff at this point. And it's very dangerous, this position that we put ourselves into. And that's why Bitcoin is so important, because it's this money that can't be debased, it can't be corrupted, and it's the first money that can't be debased, can't be corrupted or manipulated in 10,000 years. And so we as human beings have been waiting since the invention or the discovery of money, right? We've been waiting 10,000 years for a money that will last 10,000 or more years, and I couldn't be more hopeful about the future.
Damn, that was deep. Damn, you took us back to 10,000 year and like came back to like Bitcoin just like that. That was crazy. I agree. I totally agree. And I saw something that was making me think about something I saw recently. I didn't even know, because sometimes I was telling people, or I was hearing, oh, the last Bitcoin will be mined in 2140. Like, you won't even be alive then. Nah, 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 nah. And I was looking at a video. I don't remember what it was. I think it was something generational well by Swan, like the little premiere or whatever. And they said that the last Bitcoin will take 40 years to mine. So it's gonna start in 2100, in 2100. And I was like, what? Like, just, I don't know. I was like, this is just crazy, man. So basically, like, we're done mining in 88 years, 78 year. So
Yeah,
it's not that far.
It's really wild to think about where we are. I mean, a very large portion of the Bitcoin has already been mined. I think we're sitting at about 90% of all Bitcoin has been mined.
19 million, something like that.
Yeah, but it makes me think that the price must need to go up quite a bit. So that's if Satoshi's design has been perfect so far, then you better be very bullish on the price of Bitcoin, because in order for the Bitcoin network to survive off of a very small subsidy, fractions of a Bitcoin to pay all the miners, right? That Bitcoin is going to have to be worth quite a bit of money in order to pay those miners. Obviously, transaction fees will play a role there as well, but those are not going to account for nearly that. I don't think they'll account for as much until you get closer to the end cycle of where Bitcoin is at and where it's stabilized. I think Bitcoin will also move around more once the price is stabilized. The reason being is people are incentivized to hold right now, and they don't want to move it around because it's the opportunity cost of spending. If you spend Bitcoin now, you're missing out on the future value of Bitcoin, which is arguably going to be much, much higher. So people hold, they don't spend very much right now. You don't see a lot of economic movement, but as time goes on and the subsidy drops and the price stabilizes, there will be a lot more transactions occurring on the base layer, just because people will no longer be incentivized to hold for long periods of time. So they'll just be like, well, I want to buy a house. I want to buy a car. I want to buy a business that is going to have a better return. I want to buy stocks. I want to buy equities. Maybe there's other various opportunities that we haven't even imagined yet in 100 years. I mean, 10 years ago, we barely just got a smartphone in our hands. Who knows what's going to happen in 100 years, right? It's like, we'll probably be on other planets at that point.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't know the right number, but I think 2028 halving, after that, like, it's really start to go really low, like the number of Bitcoin that are being mined and all that, or maybe around that time. But it means that basically people got until that time, 2028, 2030, to get in. And after that, I think this is where it's going to really stabilize and become more like a peer-to-peer cash, like Mr. Nakamoto wanted it.
I think that 2028, by then, let's see, 2024 is the next halving, and then after that, we have 2028. So you'll go from, right now we're at 900 Bitcoin a day is mined. In the next halving, it'll be 450 Bitcoin mined a day. And then after that, what is that? 225?
Yeah.
225 a day. So it's a pretty small, it's a much smaller amount. Yeah. And there'll be a lot less available for miners. And so I think two things will happen is because of the lack of supply coming in, you'll see the price continue to go up, but also you'll see more and more miners will continue to kind of hold on to that Bitcoin as well as they mine it. Like we've been seeing, that's a big change. The difference between when I started mining in 2017 and now, the biggest change is that the miners don't sell their Bitcoin. They hold on to it. And in fact, not only do they hold on to it, they go into debt and they buy more Bitcoin. So it used to be the thought process was, okay, mine Bitcoin, and then if the power gets too expensive or if the hash rate goes up too high and your profitability drops or the price drops and the profitability drops, then you'll just buy Bitcoin and turn the miners off because you don't want to mine at a loss, right? But that game has changed significantly. Miners are continuing to mine regardless of where the price is at, and they're going into debt via equity instruments or bonds to buy more Bitcoin. I mean, I think Bitfarms just bought like 1,000 Bitcoin or something. I don't remember the exact number, right? It was like $38 million in Bitcoin they just bought.
Yeah, I saw that 43 million, I think, like, yeah, whatever.
43?
Yeah. Well, if it's the same, maybe that's another business that did something similar.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think you're right, but it was like in that area, like the $40 million range. And but that's a totally different, right? It's like, why are they not? They're not only not selling the Bitcoin, they are going out and buying more Bitcoin. I mean, that's so different from even just a few years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're going to see governments start to do that too. You already have seen governments do that to some extent with El Salvador. El Salvador is doing the Bitcoin bond. Part of that bond will go towards, I believe goes towards funding the Bitcoin city. The other, and the infrastructure for mining, and the other part of the bond is just a strict Bitcoin buy. Like they're just going to buy Bitcoin with it. So the bond owners can, they can, after 4 or 5 years, I believe the Bitcoin gets unlocked and they can start accessing it. But it's very interesting to see the way things are playing out. I think you're going to see a lot more instruments and tools being used, financial instruments being used to get governments and businesses and corporations to buy more Bitcoin. So it's going to be very interesting to see the way things play out in the next 4 to 5 years.
Nice. All right. So I think we are about 1 hour. I want to be respectful of your time. I think if it's all good with you, we can have 2 more questions to end it, if it's all good with you.
Of course.
One, you might don't want to do it, but do you want to go with a price number, or target price?
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll preface it with saying that nobody knows where we're going. I've never been more confident that I myself and that no one else has any idea where the price of Bitcoin is going to be in the short term. I will say that I am very confident that the price of Bitcoin, or the value of a Bitcoin, will continue to rise for multiple reasons. One, because governments around the world will not stop printing money. They'll not stop debasing their currencies. And two, Bitcoin will not stop getting better. People have to remember that Bitcoin is programmatic money. It is code. So we are constantly making upgrades and changes to Bitcoin. In the last several years, the biggest change was Lightning Network. That unlocked the ability for Bitcoin to have nearly free instant transactions, whereas that was not possible at Bitcoin's inception. Now we have things like Taproot being developed that is going to unlock other aspects of Bitcoin. It's going to improve the privacy. It's also going to improve the customizability of how Bitcoin can be spent, how contracts can be written, and it will also provide more privacy for what those options were within inside of your contract. That's getting very technical, but the premise is that we're always making improvements to Bitcoin. And so it's already better than gold, which means it's going to continuously take market cap from other store of value aspects such as gold. I think also some aspects of the real estate market and the stock market and art and even maybe collectibles like me and you like. Bitcoin will take market share from some of those things. And so that's going to make the price go up, but also it's improving as money. The protocol is always being upgraded. So the protocol itself is becoming more valuable as we go through history and time with this new asset. Oh, but price prediction. Okay, so
that's good. If
that was almost like a
give.
political, like if I didn't want to answer the question, that would have been like the perfect answer. I should run for office, man. I'm getting better at this stuff. So the price prediction. Okay, I had Bitcoin, multi hundred thousands by the end of this year, based off of a few different things, which is the money printing, the protocol improving, the institutions getting involved, guys like Saylor getting involved. I still kind of roughly have that price. That's a price target for me. I put it by the end of the year because most people like to have an end of year prediction. I still have that as my continued price target of, I'm a little higher than Max Keiser. I think 250K in this cycle. I think we see 250K. Max Keiser says 220K. And I think 100K is right around the corner. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it just feels like it's very imminent. I'm sure it'll happen when people are least expecting it. That's typically what Bitcoin likes to do.
Which is right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is
Let's
right
go.
now. Yes, sir.
I will say this one thing, this one caveat for people. I like when the price goes up, but I also like when the price is down. And I'll tell you why. When the price goes up, obviously my net worth is going up. I'm getting excited. Anybody gets excited when their net worth goes up, but I kind of get a little sad too. Cause I look at Bitcoin and I go, man, it's getting expensive. My income is not going up fast enough to be able to buy this newly expensive Bitcoin. So just like with the real estate market, like we all know when the markets collapse, that's when the big money comes in and they buy up all the real estate. I want to play that game with Bitcoin. When the Bitcoin collapses, I want to be able to come in and buy a lot more. So sometimes I secretly hope that the price collapses so that I can get more cheap Bitcoin. But yeah, I get it. I get excited either way. For those that are new and they haven't experienced, doubling or tripling their wealth in Bitcoin, I understand why you want the price to go up. I get that. But you should be very, very happy with where Bitcoin is right now and continuing to buy as much as you can at these prices, because in 10 years, when you look back, you're going to be filled with regret that you didn't continue to buy Bitcoin despite the price being down. Because I'm filled with regret all the time of that same scenario. So.
Yeah. Well, that was a very great answer and very bullish for more bullish than Max Keiser. So that's great. I pretty much agree on everything. I was seeing, yeah, like you said, like we never know really where it's going, but yeah, I was around that as well. At the end of, we all thought, I think, that we would hit 100K before the end of the year, but before 2022. But yeah, for sure, I see it between 150 and 250, 300 before the end of the year. So a little bit less bullish than you and Max, but yeah.
No one's as bullish as me and Max. If I could, I'd be moving to El Salvador with him right now.
Oh wow, me too, I think. Yeah. Great. So yeah, before we can tell people where to find you and where the project that can find you, maybe tell us what you want to do in the future. What are your projects? You already told us a little bit, but maybe what's in the future for Dennis?
Oh, there's lots of ideas, lots of projects being worked on. I really like the idea of continuing to fight in the political world. I think there's a real opportunity to start some sort of an organization, whether it be a PAC or super PAC. I haven't really figured out where I want to go with that yet, but that's kind of where I'm envisioning myself as time goes on. I've been a very big proponent of Erica Rhodes in California's 30th district, which is, small side note, being redistricted as California's 32nd district. So in case you look it up, you might, some people might be confused. I'm going to be pushing really hard for her. So her victory would mean a lot to me because I've put a lot of time, energy, and effort into making sure that she has a real shot. But yeah, aside from that, I've got my show, Smart People Shit. Go check it out. I interview some of the smartest people in the Bitcoin space. I bring on great guests. Like I try to bring on heavy hitters. I've had on Max Kaiser. I've had on Greg Foss, which
Ooh,
you had on here. He's great as well. Had on Breedlove, had on Preston Pish.
damn.
Some really great speakers, and I've been really fortunate to be able to have the opportunity to have them on the show. And always so grateful for how willing some of these Bitcoiners are to come on people's shows.
Yep.
I also have a couple of new interviews recently. One with one with Jason Lowery, where he talks about the U.S. government and the military getting involved with buying Bitcoin and mining. Also with Troy Cross. Troy talks about getting the ESG funds to drop into Bitcoin. There's $15 trillion of capital locked on the sidelines right now. So I like the two of those guys a lot right now because, there's the heavy hitters. Everybody's going to watch those. Those get the big views. But I really like to present new ideas to people. And so Troy Cross and Jason Lowery both presented very new, fresh takes, new looks at Bitcoin. And I think people are always searching for kind of a new perspective. So if you like gaining new perspective, or having a intellectual advantage on people by learning about something that other people haven't learned about yet, go check those 2 episodes out. Also, if you ever want to get a hold of me, I'm on Twitter. I always posting bullish tweets about Bitcoin politics, but price and various other things. You can find me at Dennis_Porter_, and my DMs are always open over there as well.
Awesome. We'll link that in the bio for sure, so it's easy for people to find you. And thanks a lot for your time, Dennis. Like you said, it's so cool to see Bitcoiner that are taking time to go on even small podcasts, new podcaster like me. So it's really great. Thanks a lot for your time. I really appreciate it.
Of course, yeah, I love the idea. I don't know why Bitcoiners are so incentivized to go on any show, whether there's 1 viewer or 100,000 viewers, but for some reason there's that incentive there. There's that desire to talk about Bitcoin. So I'm always happy to come back on and talk anytime with you, man.
Awesome. Let's redo it in 3 months, something like that, to see where you at with your project.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Take care. This is why Bitcoin is freedom.